Successful search methods used today, written on the empty pages. A story without ending, even after half a century. Dennis Martin mystery begins with a Father's Day camping trip.
Search area has expanded as the days stretch into a full week since the young crew was reported missing.
They amassed a whole lot of people, hundreds and hundreds of people. The U.S. Army was fixing to look helicopters.
On a clear afternoon day in June 1969, William Martin noticed how perfect the weather was for a family outing like any other. Like many families, the Martins had a beloved tradition of escaping to the mountains for some quality time together. A tradition spanning more than 50 years. William, an architect from Knoxville, had brought along his father Clyde and his two young sons, Doug and Dennis, for a weekend of hiking and camping. Tomorrow was Father's Day, and Dennis's 7th birthday was just around the corner. This trip was particularly special because it was Dennis's first time joining the adventure. What was meant to be a joyful family outing turned into a haunting mystery that would leave the family and community searching decades for answers. On Saturday, June 14th, at around 4:30 p.m., Dennis and his younger brother joined some children from another camping group to play a harmless game of hide and seek. Dennis, eager to surprise the adults, including his father, took his brother's suggestion to take a shortcut around the trees and hide in a nearby bush. This was the last time anyone saw Dennis. He had vanished without a trace.
This 6-year-old from Knoxville hiked a couple of days with his dad, grandpa, and older brother, from Cades Cove up to the Appalachian Trail and over to Spence Field. On the hike, they met another family with 2 young boys, and the adults all sat together in the grass and watched the children play, and played along themselves when it was obvious the boys were huddled up and planning a prank on their parents.
Before delving any further into the case, we must first talk about the area where Dennis went missing to better fully understand the events that occurred right after his disappearance. Dennis went missing in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, a park that is in the southeastern part of the United States, in between both Tennessee and North Carolina. We will be focusing on the area that is in the state of Tennessee. Within this area, there are a few major areas to keep in mind: Spence Field, Cades Cove, Rowan's Creek, and Sea Branch, which we will later discuss. At around 4:32 to 4:35 p.m., Dennis's father realizes that his son is missing and begins searching. His father's frantic search, added to the fact that he had seen Dennis hide behind the bush mentioned earlier, makes him unable to locate Dennis. Dennis and his family had been traveling the Appalachian Trail. They would regularly tend to their gear at a shelter. The night prior, they had stopped at the Spence Fields shelter. Early on, his father had suggested that Dennis may have gone to the shelter. During the time frame of 6 to 6:45 p.m., Harold Key and his family, who were also on the trail that day, hear a scream and see an unkempt man hiding in the brush near Sea Branch, about 7 miles from Spence Field. At 8:30 p.m., Dennis's grandfather reports his grandson missing to the park rangers at Cades Cove. The rugged terrain, marked by steep slopes and ravines, posed formidable challenges to the search efforts. According to the complexity, at 9 p.m., a thunderstorm dumps 2.5 inches of driving rain on Spence Field throughout the night. Search efforts continue, but with great difficulty. At 5 a.m., a search crew of park rangers, Blount and Sevier County Rescue Squad volunteers, and hikers assemble at Boat Mountain Road to search for Dennis. At 1 p.m., the search party swells to more than 240 people, including local Boy Scouts, park rangers in training, and North Carolina Rescue Squad crews on jeeps, trucks, and helicopters. The park sets up a 24-hour watch at Spence Field. This day marks the start of the week. At 6 a.m., search efforts resume, joined by airmen from McGee-Tyson National Guard Base and rescue squad volunteers from across Tennessee, Kentucky, South Carolina, and Georgia. The total number of searchers soars over 300 and includes American Red Cross volunteers providing meals. Search dogs are used, and more rain falls that night. Army Special Forces, cited as the Green Berets, arrived from a training exercise in the Nantahala National Forest to join the search. Cloudy weather grounds helicopter crews. Trucks haul in gravel to shore up roads and trails. The total number of searchers tops 365, and 56 square miles of land have been searched. At 2 p.m., 2 men from Townsend noticed a shoe print near the west prong of the Pigeon River. It matched the exact size of the Oxford-style shoe that Dennis Martin was last seen wearing. Dwight McCarter, a park ranger at the time, stated that his lead wasn't thoroughly pursued because searchers had already covered the area. At 24 years old, McCarter was still learning from senior rangers and other mentors. Reflecting on the case today, he wishes that extensive searches had been conducted in the area where the shoe print was found, and in the Sea Branch area where a scream was heard and the unkempt man was spotted. McCarter believed that the prints were likely Dennis's, pointing out their solitary nature and the absence of other scouts who were also searching barefoot. Fog grounds aircrafts again. Searchers increased to more than 600. A plan for William Martin to call for his son from an airplane fails when a rock knocks out the plane's landing gear. Rangers set up traffic control stations as more volunteers continue to pour in. On Thursday, June 19th, the total number of searchers approaches 700, including Tennessee Highway Patrol troopers, Knoxville firefighters, and TVA foresters. William Martin calls for his son from a bullhorn aboard a THP helicopter. Rangers begin checking pit toilets, watching buzzards, and testing bear and boar scat. Friday, June 20th, marked the day of Dennis Martin's birthday. The total number of searchers tops 780. Rangers closed Cades Cove Road to keep out gawkers, and park officials began making plans for recovering Dennis's body if found. On Saturday, search crew members peak at more than 1,400. A volunteer ends up falling from a bridge and breaks an arm. Another accidentally shoots himself. Park officials make a public plea for no more volunteers. Park officials later admitted that it was a mistake to have deployed so many inexperienced searchers so early on in the investigation. McCarter, who had worked on hundreds of similar cases, had this to say about the large amount of searchers. All those people, in reference to the searchers, means a lot of footprints. All those trucks. We searched and searched and searched. Something should have been found. But you have to know what to look for. Get just a few of us trackers in first, and give us a chance. Park Superintendent Keith Nielsen also had this to say. This search developed so fast that we failed to realize the need for quick organization from the standpoint of manpower, overhead, and public relations. Searchers dwindle, but still top 1,000. Park officials conclude the search, which now spans more than 56 square miles and has covered all likely locations. Heavy rains and flash flooding begin and endure overnight. Continued rains send searchers to shelter and shrink ranks to 427. June 24th, 2 additional dog teams join the search as William Martin calls for his son using a megaphone. Hopes briefly rise when someone spots a boy dressed like Dennis in Cades Cove, but it turns out to be a false lead. As the situation grows increasingly dire, park officials begin discussing plans to wind down the search. On Wednesday, June 25th, National Guardsmen begin to depart, and Park Superintendent George Fry declares that the search is nearing its end. The Martin family, coming to terms with the situation, break camp and return home to Knoxville. On Thursday, June 26th, the number of searchers dwindled to 121. A smell of decay near Tremont was investigated, but was found to be a dead dog. Meanwhile, Carson Brewer of the Knoxville News Sentinel received a cryptic call urging searchers to look in the trees and treetops and to stop looking on the ground. This strange message added yet another puzzling detail to the already unsettling case. June 29th. Rangers eventually suspended all major search operations, and FBI agents informed park officials that there was no evidence supporting a kidnapping. A trio of hackers continued to search the next 50 days, along with McCarter and his crew. The Martin family even offered $5,000 for any information leading to their son. July 3rd. McCarter and a small crew of the remaining searchers reported a nasty odor as they headed up the West Prong Trail. This is what he had to say. "It was just a smell that wasn't an animal. I didn't think," he recalled. "I'd smell dead bear and deer. They smell different." After conveying his information to park officials back at HQ, they had radioed back that it was a dead crow. The area was checked already. McCarter questions that call to this day. "It wasn't a crow. I've smelled a dead crow. This was worse." The spot would have been downwind from the water break at Eagle Creek, where the 2 hiking Townsend men found the child-sized shoe prints 4 days into the search. He was then asked how certain he was of what he smelled on a scale of 1 to 10. He responded by saying, "About a 5. I don't know what it was, but it was worth checking. It should have been checked." September 11th. Park officials finally declared the search for Dennis Martin closed. In 1985, authorities, led by McCarter, were informed by a ginseng hunter about what he believed to be the skeletal remains of a child in Tremont's Big Hollow, Tennessee. The man kept the find to himself for years because he had been illegally hunting ginseng and feared he would be prosecuted. It is illegal to harvest American ginseng roots on most state lands. He reached out to his acquaintance, McCarter, and informed him about the skeleton. McCarter, along with 30 volunteer rescue squad members from Swain County, North Carolina, searched the area but found nothing. By then, any remains would likely have been destroyed by animals. McCarter noted that the location was roughly 3 to 3.5 miles downhill from where Dennis was last seen, and in the same direction as the Oxford shoe print found near the West Prong. It is approximately 9 miles from where the scream and the unkept man were reported to have been.
A number of rumors are making the rounds, some of them more popular than others, most of them based on far-fetched theory.
Did Dennis Martin fall off a cliff? Was he attacked by an animal? Kidnapped? Investigators followed countless leads for months, none of them leading to Dennis.
Three prevailing theories emerged to explain Dennis's disappearance. The first suggests that he became lost and succumbed to the elements. The harsh conditions, including chilly temperatures and hazardous wildlife, could have tragically ended his life. At the time of his disappearance, it was known that Dennis had mild learning disabilities. Sources claimed that at the time of his disappearance, his mental age was about half a year behind his actual age. Though he lagged about 6 months behind his peers in school, he compensated with a keen sense of the outdoors and an indomitable spirit. Despite never having ventured far from home for camping, he demonstrated an innate comfort in woodland settings, having been carried along hikes since before he could walk. Often taking the lead on trails, he traversed them with such speed that even adults struggled to keep pace. In hindsight, it seems odd that a child with such experience could get lost in mere minutes.
It has been cited that over 600,000 people go missing every year in the US, and 1,600 of those that go missing disappear in national parks.
The second theory proposes the most chilling theory, which suggests foul play, speculating that Dennis was abducted from the park. His father supports and even cites the sighting by tourist Harold Key of the unkept man near where Dennis disappeared, though authorities couldn't establish a definitive link. Let's dive a little more into this theory. Harold Key had also observed the man getting into a white car, which then hastily departed the area.
I looked across the creek and saw a man in the bushes,
Key recalled.
I couldn't tell much about him, because he was going down the creek towards the cars. He was definitely trying to keep from being seen. I thought maybe he was a moonshiner.
Key said he crossed the creek and found what looked like a crudely drawn map on a scrap of paper about where the man would have been. When he came back, he noticed that the only other car parked at the roadside was an older model white Chevrolet, gone.
A family from Carthage, Tennessee, were on the exit side of the loop road. They were following the deer up Rowan's Creek, and they heard a child scream. The father ran up there, and he saw a man dart into the woods, and he described him as unkempt. And they never saw the child, though. But if you're a parent, you know a child scream.
He didn't learn about Dennis Martin until the next day, and at first he kept quiet. The information was reported to the park rangers and the FBI. As stated previously, authorities concluded that there was insufficient evidence to directly link the sighting to Dennis Martin's disappearance. Rangers ultimately concluded that Key must have been at the Sea Branch, as mentioned previously, a small stream that crosses the south leg of the Cades Cove Loop Road, just west of Rowan's Creek. That would have put him at least 5 miles from Spencefield, closer to 7, or as much as 9 miles away by trails. To cover that distance in the space of 2 hours, or less, would have taken Olympic effort, especially for somebody avoiding the trails. That's without accounting for how a kidnapper or killer could have crept up on Dennis in the open meadow on a sunny day. However, McCarter said it is possible for a physically fit man to carry a small boy between the 2 points. Perhaps more significantly, Dennis Martin could have reached that location alone. Key stuck to the story through the decades, all the way to his death at the age of 94. Other far-fetched theories suggest that Dennis may have inadvertently stumbled upon a secret government experiment or a facility hidden within the park, or some other secret resulting in his disappearance. Proponents of this theory suggest that government agents may have intervened to cover any evidence of their activities. However, there is no credible evidence to support such claims, and they remain purely speculative. And on the claims, the Green Berets were called in. However, after doing some more research on this theory, there is conflicting information regarding whether the Green Berets were actually involved in a routine exercise near the area at the time of Dennis Martin's disappearance. Some sources suggest that they were called in specifically to assist with the search efforts, while others indicate their presence may have been coincidental. Without access to definitive records or documentation, it is difficult to confirm the exact circumstances surrounding their involvement. In relation to these theories, one thing I would like to go over is a Redditor's claims. This is what they had to say after conversing with many locals over the topic. The stories reported in the papers differ from what the locals state. According to locals, the military had knowledge of feral wild men in the Great Smoky Mountains, which is why they got involved in the Martin case. While the Green Berets were in those woods, they allegedly killed over 30 feral wild men, including the one that snatched Dennis Martin. The military reportedly found bones and clothes belonging to Dennis, but decided not to inform the family, believing they could not handle the truth. It is claimed that the wild man had eaten Dennis, and this information has been kept from the family and media for years. The claims made by the locals in this Redditor's post would confirm the claims made by Harold Key. It would also explain why the Green Berets were actually in the location. Maybe a little more far-fetched, but lastly, if we also consider the fact that somebody had called Carson Brewer about looking up in the treetops, could this possibly be referring to those feral wild men climbing up trees trying to stay out of sight?
As stated previously, about 1,600 people go missing annually in the United States national parks. It is well known that park services do not want to talk about them. Maybe the truth lies with those feral men and is known among some park officials, but due to fear of losing potential profits and revenue, they are kept a secret. 2021 data shows that national park visitor spending totals around $42.5 billion to the U.S. economy. Perhaps the U.S. government knows a thing or two. Perhaps it's keeping it a secret from the public. And perhaps it's been going on for years, and Dennis fell victim to whatever was lurking in the Smoky Mountains that day. Who knows?
Despite the passage of time, Dennis Martin's disappearance remains a poignant and unresolved chapter in the history of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, leaving behind unanswered questions and haunting memories. Following Dennis's disappearance, his father became a vocal advocate for improved search and rescue procedures in national parks. He pushed for better coordination and equipment to handle future emergencies, contributing to significant enhancements in park safety protocols and search operations. Over the years, Dennis's case has attracted considerable attention from amateur sleuths and investigating journalists. Various theories and speculations continue to circulate, making his disappearance one of the most enduring mysteries in the park's history. This case has captivated the public imagination, prompting ongoing discussions about wilderness safety and the unexplained. One thing is certain. What began as the continuation of a half-century tradition for the Martins, exploring what could only be considered an ordinary location for them, turned into a lifelong nightmare. It's as I always say, the most extraordinary things happen in the most ordinary places.
people got together and tried to figure out how could you have so many people looking for a lost boy and not be able to find him.
Searchers stampeded any chance for dogs to pick up a scent, and dozens of Boy Scouts who helped the first day covered the muddy terrain in child-sized footprints in every direction.
It don't work. Don't work. You lost the child forever.